Weekdays 8:30 to 11 on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO and the KFYO app. You're listening to KFYO news coverage of the Lubbock ISD Board of Trustees Candidate Forum, presented by Utmost Design and the Science Spectrum. Now here's Steve Evans.
Welcome back to KFYO's Candidate Forum featuring the Lubbock Independent School District School Board candidates. With the introductions out of the way, we'll jump right into our first question. What experience or skills do you have that has prepared you to serve as school board trustee? I'll remind you, you have 60 seconds. Angelina Mojica, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a certified family life educator. I have a master's in human services. I started the nonprofit program back in March of 2019. So building a program from ground up, meaning hiring people, understanding how team cohesiveness, team unity, how that makes big influence on how program is developed. And then not only that, networking in the Lubbock area, being able to go out and introduce the goals, the strategic plan that we have set for ourselves, and being able to understand how the big picture plays in all of it. So the skills that I bring life experiences as well. I was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas, love the Lubbock culture, and also graduate of Lubbock High. All my children attended the school systems here, and 2 graduates, and I have 1 well on his way. And so I'm very familiar with the Lubbock School.
Thank you, Mrs. Briggs. Same question.
In addition to the last 4 years of serving on the Board of Trustees, I have served as chairwoman of the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce, which represents 2,000 businesses in the city. I served as president of the Junior League of Lubbock, which serves 200 plus volunteers. And I served as the president of the Volunteer Center of Lubbock. So I've had a lot of leadership experience. I have deep connections in this community. I have a deep love for this community. In addition, I have a son who's graduating from Lubbock High. He's my why. He has thrived and flourished with Lubbock ISD. And the skills that I bring are the connections, the knowledge, the experience, the passion, and the heart for this community and for Lubbock Independent School District.
Thank you. Dr. Carr?
I think, again, it boils down to one thing that sets me out is money. That I've managed my own practice for about 30 years. I'm the managing partner for a building worth over $1 million down by Covenant. I've served on various boards handling 6-figure, like with the National Kidney Foundation. I've been on the Patient Services Committee and run over 6-figure budgets. I've gone out and gotten money from lobbyists down in Austin and such. And then I know the concerns of people that have about the money, but in the end, that's kind of the reality, isn't it? We're going to have to pay for these programs. Our teachers are in desperate need of salary increases. We need to give them more salary. We need to take things off their plate. We need to look at issues like standardized testing, and to the extent that we can, lobby those down in Austin to make them more reasonable. So I think the years of experience that I've had, the organizations I've been involved with, all speak to the issue of I know how to handle money. And so I also know how politics works. I've been doing it since I was 5 years old when my uncle was the Attorney General of Texas. I was campaigning for him when I could barely walk. Okay, so I know that. So appreciate that we can look at this, but that's what it boils down to is what do you guys want for us to do about money?
Thank you. That segues into my next question. Mrs. Bridges, we'll begin with you. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
The school funding platform is complicated at best. So what we do is we start each year with basically a zero-based budget. So we look at each department, each program, and really investigate and search to make sure that we need those programs, because we do recognize that teachers need a raise and we need to provide those resources for them. So balancing our budget, it's about a $240 million budget, with the raising property values that we've had here and the taxing entities is a balancing act, and it's a difficult question. We're a little tied to what the state tells us to do. We are tied to some of their funding formulas, But we absolutely take stewardship of your public resources seriously, and we don't take lightly looking at every expense.
Same question, Dr. Carr.
I think part of the problem is that we keep seeing action down in Austin where they put caps on property appraisals and such as that. And of course, the school board doesn't have anything to do with the appraisal district, but we do set the tax rate. And if you look at your property tax bill, you'll see that LISD is the #1 cost in that billing. And so I think the important thing is we don't want to be retroactive or reactive to what's going on. I think, for example, that, and we don't have time in this discussion to talk about it, but 2 weeks ago, New Mexico did something that's going to bring them $60 million more in taxes. And if we can get postured now in this process, we can take part of what you see in other states where they take 40 to 50% of the money raised from that tax that pays for our schools. And so it's got to come from somewhere. I can tell you as a licensed psychologist, I'd rather people not drink or use any kind of drugs. But if they do, a user tax is one way to generate some additional funds that takes it off of you. And so I think with reason, we can allocate additional money for drug awareness, but we also need to look at the idea of, but where are we going to get more money? And don't let those people in Austin just put it wherever they want to put it.
Ms. Blake?
Yes, thank you. So I would agree, stewardship is key here, and it is a balancing act. And doing some homework, I was watching a school board meeting that was recorded, and there is the vital thing there is communication and really understanding how funds are allocated, where our funding is coming from. The experience that I have in that is with the program that I run, it's 100% private donations. So you have to be accountable for those funds. You have to know how you're utilizing those monies and when to use them, where to use them, and what is going to be the best for your dollar. But communication, so also hearing from teachers, hearing from the community in regards to the needs. What are the needs and how can we use funding and balance it all out in order to help mitigate issues and things that are popping up in the community?
I want to go just across the table real quick. Would you raise taxes to fund your ideas?
I would look at that, I would.
Mrs. Bridges? No.
No.
Thank you. Next question, we'll begin with Dr. Carr. Is there a particular issue, an important issue that motivates you to serve on the school board?
Well, I think that to appreciate that, having spent my entire life in healthcare, that unfortunately what happens is we usually wait till the wheels come off and people are in crisis before we do anything about it, which is the most expensive way to take care of business. So I think primary prevention, if you want to deal with issues like what it costs to lock somebody up in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, you can realize that we could basically take a social worker and give them just one client for what that costs. And so I think that we need to look at some of those ways at getting in front of the problem rather than waiting until after it's broken. And this is going to require partnerships. And so some of this is going to be to the extent that people will volunteer their time and their funds. That's important. But I think, again, we want to coordinate our lobbying effort with the lawmakers to get the help that we can to get the funding so that we don't put our kids, have them straight from school to prisons.
Speaking.
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, is there a particular issue that motivates you to run for school board?
Yeah, the issue that motivates me is the closure of Dupree School. What has happened was, from the research that I've done and just kind of listening to the community, was there wasn't communication in regards to that. And it also worries me that certain areas in Lubbock are targeted as far as schools closing and whatnot, and that school closures disintegrate a community, neighborhood, and it affects children that are having to be moved from one location to another, and I'm not okay with that.
Thank you. Mrs. Bridges?
The issue for me is coming out of the last 2 years and the momentum that we started before COVID and that we have going now, that we are mostly through that pandemic, is to make sure that we reach our North Star goal. And this is all about student outcomes. And it's about the student input. Will we input into our students to reach the student outcome of our North Star goal being by the year 2026, we want at least 80% of our students in quality seats, meaning A or B campuses. So we have a strategic plan built around that framework that supports that North Star goal, and that is the bottom line of what our mission is. The mission of a school district is to provide education and to educate our citizens for the future. And so that is my issue, because that is our charge.
Thank you very much. I want to go back to tax dollars. As you know, the heated discussion that's happening in the state legislature is taxpayer-funded lobbying. We're going to hear a whole lot more during the next session. Would you, as a school board member, vote or participate in using schools' tax dollars for taxpayer-funded lobbying? Ms. Mohican.
No.
You have 60 seconds if you'd like to explain.
Sure, I could elaborate. I think that school funding, we're talking about teachers needing pay raises and things like that. So I think school funding should be used just for that, for school resources and for the people that are serving in our schools. And no was my answer.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Bridges?
I'm saying no. We do need to protect those resources and make sure that they're used locally to impact what we need to impact, and that is growing our students and providing the programs that they need, the programs and the input that our teachers need in order to provide those programs.
Thank you. Dr. Carr?
I think that you don't, I would say no to using taxpayer dollars for lobbying, but I'd also say that to recognize the power of the block. Okay, when we got 6,000 signatures on that petition for the health department, that forced the city to go ahead and keep the health department going. I think we can do the same thing down in Austin if we lobby and partner with people like the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Realtors, local fiscal institutions, to go down there, and it wouldn't cost anything because it's all in our mutual interest to do it and to lobby, but they've got to know that we're a block, that we're not going to just ignore this. It's just like I think teachers could get better health insurance if we realize that with 2,000 people, that you can get better health insurance if you go to a carrier and you say, look, we got 2,000 people, and if you're not going to do what we need you to do, we're going to go talk to those other guys down the street. That's how you get success in politics.
All right, my next question, we'll begin with Mrs. Bridges. What do you see as the role of schools in teaching children about topics such as sex education, sexual orientation, and gender assignment?
So I think the role of schools and sex ed, because that is historically something that is appropriately handled beginning in, I believe, middle school. But I do not believe that gender identity or some of the other issues that you taught that should not be taught in public schools. Those are not issues that children should be confronted with in a public school setting. That is an issue that parents should address at home, and I just believe it should stay out of the school.
Dr. Carr?
I think we know by this point, about 20 years into abstinence versus abstinence plus programs, that abstinence programs by themselves have not really impacted the problem. That, this is Child Abuse Month, and why is Lubbock consistently in the top 3 for child abuse? And it all ties back into what we can do through the schools. But I think the idea of we have to make things appropriate, but here's a point where I want to talk about the fact that I want to represent the stakeholders. And so whatever my personal opinions may be about some things, I want to be able to reach out to you guys and find out what do you want, because I am your conduit, I'm your mouthpiece. And so I would vote for what I perceive to be the majority of the stakeholders, even if it may be different from my own opinion, because I represent you.
Ms. Mohican?
As an advocate for the community, I as well would put aside my biases or any opinions or beliefs that I have and do what is in best interest for the students. We need schools that provide thriving atmospheres and environment that is inclusive.
I'm sorry, you still have time.
Yeah, that's fine.
I hit the wrong button.
Yeah, that's inclusive, and that's going to allow children to learn. If they're worried about other issues and situations and not feeling accepted and whatnot, it's going to impede on their ability to learn.
All right. Let's see. I have another question I want to go ahead and get in. And we'll begin with Dr. Carr. With the number of school shootings in recent years, would you vote to allow teachers in the Lubbock Independent School District that had their concealed carry permit to carry in school? If not, how would you increase campus security?
Well, I think the first thing we want to look at is the idea of what's happened now in other states where they have, carry on school property, and see if it's had a benefit. My concern would be, even when you take law enforcement who are trained with weapons, they're not that great at using them. And so I'd have a concern that teacher, in an attempt to take out somebody that's on the property, would end up killing all their students. And so I want to look at that, and I wouldn't say at this point that I would be for it or against it, but I have a concern about arming people who aren't necessarily that well trained. It's just like at our clinic, we have 30-06 signs, and you know how they got there? Not from me, but from Dr. Robert Ordonez, who is a Bronze Star winning Vietnam veteran, and he didn't like the idea about people coming in our clinic armed because he doesn't think people know how to shoot either. So as to other security systems, I think that it goes back to, again, that partnering. We want to identify some of these children and some of the people in the community so that we're not surprised. You know, often they say, oh, well, you know, he seemed like such a nice person right before he opened up on the subway. And so we need to do that, and the prevention part of that, and we do need to do better about security.
Thank you. Ms. Mojica?
Again, it's about school safety and an atmosphere that is safe, and I don't think that carrying concealed weapons might be conducive to fostering an environment as such. Definitely need to look at security issues because, again, with things that are occurring in the world today, security needs to be of utmost interest, and being able to have that security on campus is important. But I don't think allowing teachers to carry concealed weapons would be conducive to that environment because, again, coming out of COVID and that bounce back with that, mental health is an issue right now going on in schools, and with instability in emotional regulations and things of such, it may not be wise to carry on campuses.
Thank you. Mrs. Bridges?
I'm not in favor of the concealed carry for the teachers on campus for many of the reasons that have already been stated. I think that there could be some hybrid solutions with school marshals on campus if needed. But I do believe if you put too many guns on the campus, and it just creates too many opportunities for tragedy. I will also add that with the bond package that was passed in 2018 by our community, we did have significant improvements in safety and security at every campus, and that is still ongoing. We are still making those improvements by making secure vestibule entrances, doors that can be locked down, window film, improved CCTV security cameras around the campus, and partnership with law enforcement so that we can do those types of measures to keep our schools safe.
Thank you. Well, our next question, we'll start with Ms. Mojica. Critical race theory has been outlawed by an enacting law in Texas. How do you determine that critical race theory or that by any other variation of names is not being taught in Lubbock schools?
Well, to my understanding, it isn't being taught today. It isn't being taught, and it's not anything that, to my understanding, that is of current issue or conversation. So I don't see it being right now irrelevant, but I think also if it is a topic that presents itself, I mean, it's definitely something to look into. I mean, it's about true history, and you know, some talk about division, some talk about it placing blame, some talk about it not just the philosophies behind it. You know, do I believe in some of the philosophies? No, because some of the philosophies say, as a minority, I can't progress further than where I was born, and that's not true.
Mrs. Bridges?
CRT is not taught in Lubbock ISD, nor is it approved by any policy at Lubbock ISD, and our board members feel strongly that we will remain alert to that, and we don't want that to happen, of course, and to get into our schools. So it's a higher ed thing. It is divisive, but listening to our community constituents, it is not something that will be taught at Lubbock High or at Lubbock ISD. Excuse me.
Thank you, Dr. Carr.
I think critical race theory is a dog whistle. Okay, I don't think it has much of an impact at all because it's not taught, just as the incumbent had mentioned. But you know what it does? It distracts us from these other issues. So we're so busy talking about critical race theory. What about kids that are hungry? What about kids that are having family issues that we want to put mental health more into there to help them? But as long as we let our politicians throw out these little dog whistles, then we miss the issue. And it's sort of like, you know, the Wizard of Oz. Don't notice the man behind the curtain, because that's where the problem is. And so let's get back to the real issues that are actually occurring in our schools and make changes with those.
Thank you. And this question will start with Mrs. Bridges. We have two schools, at least two schools in our school system that are international baccalaureate schools. Do you support the international baccalaureate program, and would you like to see it expanded?
I do support the IB program. My son will have an IB diploma. And the breadth of the programming and the different way that is taught, and it has been a wonderful learning experience for him. I do support it. We are adding the IB certification program at Coronado High School, which is more of a business focus for careers, and I do support that just because of the quality of education that those kids receive.
Dr. Carr?
You know, I think Talkington's a fine school. I think the LEAP program at Lubbock High is a fine program. But I think we sometimes forget that not everybody's going to go on to college after high school. We could do a better job vocationally. We could do a better job career-wise. So that when I was advised when graduating from Monterey that as to my post-high school plans, I should get a job because I was not college material based on standardized testing. So all I can say is I think we could do a better job of realizing that trades and vocations, that some people, they want to go straight into the workplace. And so while I support these other programs because of the excellence of them, I think we don't need to do it at the cost of leaving other students behind to where they just wash out of the system and then we end up paying for them.
Ms. Monique?
Yes, so my daughter attended Lubbock High School during the time that it was IB. And it does, there's an excellent program, but also too, it leaves out some of the other children that don't excel academically or don't have a college plan. And so I think being more fair in the community as far as being able to provide education that will be effective for everyone that is attending, everyone that doesn't excel academically or doesn't want to excel, because it's not necessarily a matter of can't, it might be a matter of want. And offering vocational classes, I agree with that. Being able to implement funds that will meet every need.
Dr. Carr, my final question for this panel. At previous forums, there's been discussion of replacing Superintendent Kathy Rolo. Where do you stand on her as the superintendent going forward?
Well, I think just as we want to talk about performance with our schools, which we have a number of schools that are going to be under, again, scrutiny as we get back to grading schools starting in the fall, I think that none of us should be able to say that I'm no longer held accountable. And so while I personally don't know of any particular, nothing that stands out in my mind with Dr. Rolo, and have you met with her earlier, I just think the idea is we all are accountable to you. And so she's accountable to this board, we're accountable to you, and the other citizens. And so the important thing is not making you feel like you're left out when you can't get to a 7 a.m. meeting or you're trying to get your kids to school things. So I would say that all of us should be held accountable.
Thank you. Ms. Monique?
Yes, thank you. So leadership consistency, yes, accountability being one of those things. And I'm not sitting here saying that I have an agenda to fire Kathy Rolo. That is not my agenda at all. My agenda is to make sure that schools have what they need, that teachers have what they need, that community is supporting in that need, bringing in those resources, connecting schools, because I think it takes a community to help schools thrive. And I know that there's a disconnect there. I know that that's an issue. And it's a board of 7, so everyone sitting on that board is accountable, and so is Kathy Rolo.
Thank you. Mrs. Bridges?
Dr. Rolo is not disconnected from the community or from our district or from her constituents, nor from her board. She is well respected in this community. She is well respected in this state. She is well respected by teachers in this district. She has implemented programs and brought curriculum, and she has an early childhood education background, so she understands the art and science of education. She is definitely the one to take us forward. We, along with her in partnership, created a strategic plan to address these goals. And this is not a strategic plan that's going to be on the shelf. This is a plan that we hear feedback and updates regularly from all departments to make sure we're meeting our benchmarks, adjust if needed, and use and scale what's working across the district. So no, I have great confidence in Dr. Rolo.
Thank you. We'll take a short break. We come back, we'll have our closing statements. You're listening to the KFYO Candidate Forum with the Lubbock Independent School District School Board at-large candidates. We'll be right back.
Coverage of the Lubbock ISD Board of Trustees, candidate design, and the science spectrum. Now here's Steve Evans.
Welcome back to KFYO's Candidate Forum with the Lubbock Independent School District Member-at-Large School Board candidates. We will begin our closing statements with Dr. Carr, 90 seconds.
You know, as a psychologist with over 30 years of experience, I've talked a lot with our kids over the years. I've probably performed thousands of learning disability 504 accommodation evaluations. I think I have a good understanding of kids in this school district across the city. I also know teachers. I've spent countless hours and have several teachers now, either retired or active, who guess what, they're kind of stressed, and so they want to come see a psychologist to talk about it. So I understand, again, the teachers that we have. And then the community. I think it's invaluable to grow up and spend my life here, to know that between my wife and I, we have 5 daughters, 1 son, and 17 grandkids. And so I understand the system there, and I think that's important because you don't want to, and I agree with Ms. Bridges about, you don't want to have somebody with kind of limited experience, and I think I've got solid experience. I've worked with these kids, I've worked with these teachers, I've worked with the politicians around here, and I'm ready set on day one to get some things going. And so I hope and appreciate that you would consider that. If you want to go to Dr. Carr for LISD.com, you can go read up about what happened on the Board of Health and some of the other things that we're doing right now. But give me a call and let's talk about it, because it's a communication from you that will make me a better trustee.
Thank you. Mrs. Bridges.
I want to take a moment to address the vocational comments that come up, vocational training. We have a program at the Byron Martin Advanced Technology Center with dozens, if not more, vocational training programs, CTE, career and technical education programs, where kids can graduate with a plumbing certification and go right into the workforce. Plumbing, electrician, construction, AutoCAD, florist, culinary. There is a wide variety of vocational training that our schools, that our students can benefit from. That is not a need. There's a need to improve it and continue to improve it. Health services in the healthcare field, architecture. There's a number of things that we are bringing to the table to improve that. And I'll close by saying, again, this is not the time for inexperience in order to get our students where they need to be. Running a district is a business, and it's a huge beast. It's huge. There is so much to it, from running your special services departments, to your vocational training, to your special IB programs, to athletics. It is a wide variety of needs that serve a wide variety of students. And it takes someone who has been there for 4 years, with a heart for it, that can carry us forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mojica.
Yes, so for the past 7 years, I've worked with the Lubbock community. I served as a family-based safety service worker through the Department of Family and Protective Services. I've also served, again, with our nonprofit agency, working with foster homes and children and understanding needs and working in the community. And now, for the past 4 years, I've served the community at large, meaning I go into the community and I talk to the community and I build relationships with the community, working with families, children, schools, anything and everything, you name it, not other agencies and whatnot. But I also understand the children. 59% of the students are Hispanic. I am a Hispanic woman. I've lived in this Lubbock community. I have overcome so many obstacles that would have otherwise told me I could not do it. And I have. And I feel that I am called and passionate, regardless of the type of experience we're looking for here. I know that I can do this. And I know that I have a heart for it. And I know that I would work very hard in doing so, because I do that every day. I wake up and I'm hitting the pavement, talking to people, working with families, seeing transformation happen through the skill set that I have. I coach, I counsel, I help. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the at-large candidates for joining us tonight. Let's have an in-studio guest round of applause for our candidates. Thank you so much. We're going to take a 5-minute break while we see seat our District 3 and 4 candidates. You're listening to KFYO's Candidate Forum series with the Lubbock Independent School District School Board candidates. We'll be right back.